Isle Royale is a mini mountain range jutting up from the bottom of Lake Superior. It's over 571,000 acres of wilderness, a remote national park that's actually closer to Canada than it is to Michigan, the state that claims it. Visitors know it for its rough beauty.
Oh man, majestic splendor. And I'm sure that's a term that's been used a lot, but it's true. If you look at the sheer cliffs and you look at the expanse of the wilderness on Isle Royale, it's amazing. It's breathtaking.
Getting to the island can be as easy as taking a ferry. They run from Michigan and Minnesota, but we'll need a dive boat to get to the places we're interested in.
Our biggest concern was getting there by boat. And Lake Superior waters are known for blowing up fast on you. One of the things we had to decide was to go out of Copper Harbor. It's 56 miles across. On a nice day, that's no big deal. It takes some time, but you're going to be using up most of your gas getting there. And also, if you have to come back for air, which we in turn had to, it's too far to come.
The isolation is a big draw for those who want to get away from it all, but it's tough if you need to refill your air cylinders. Planning is critical if you plan on more than one shipwreck site during your trip. You'll also need to check in before you dive in.
Now, when you dive Isle Royale, you also have to be aware it's a national park, so you have to register with them before you're allowed to dive. The 2 points to register are at this end of the island or at this end. The shipwrecks we wanted to dive were at this end and the northeast end. So what we had to decide then was to go out of Grand Portage, Minnesota. We drove around to that, and it's a 20-mile run across there. So that was nice, and we had to go about 3 miles up the bay to register with the Park Service, which gave us the time to look and admire the island. It's such a beautiful area.
The most visited wreck is the passenger steamer America, lost in June of 1928 after dropping passengers onto the island and heading out of the harbor. The ship tore its bottom on a reef, and the captain tried to beach the ship, but instead ran on yet another rock only a few yards from shore.
First thing I noticed as soon as we were tying up is, geez, it's right there. You can see it through good Lake Superior clear waters again. And other times, I've heard reports where the visibility is so good with the sun overhead, they see the stern of it, or they can see down 55, 60 feet in that area. So it makes it really nice that way.
The America lies on a steep angle that drops to nearly 70 feet. Its rudder was crushed as the ship hit bottom, and its bow nearly breaks the surface. Somehow the bay protects this wreck from ice, which normally crushes even steel ships in just a few years.
I think that one is particularly sheltered, although a lot of the wooden upperworks has been destroyed, cabin structure. But if you think about it, it was sitting above the rock, and it was wedged firmly on the rock when it first went down, and it's been salvaged over the years, and et cetera. In fact, they tried raising it at one time.
Much of the midsection of the ship is still intact, with door frames and picture windows clearly recognizable. A dramatic stairway also greets divers near the engine room.
I think that's one that you could look at 2 or 3 times and you still wouldn't see everything you'd want to see. You see the wide staircase in it and the passageways, and then you can see around on the back end, the stern of it, where they had an open area that was covered, but you could just picture the people sitting there watching the scenery go by as they cruise into the island.
Beautiful, because you can get anywhere from 5 to 60 feet, and that for especially a beginning diver even is awesome. The only thing you have to deal with in there is the cold. We were, I think, probably around 40 degrees in the water, but you could go all the way around the vessel and still stay pretty much within sport diving, elementary sport diving range.
Much of Matt's diving is on broken pieces that were once ships. Here he doesn't need his imagination to see where the passengers once walked.
Yes, I'm definitely partial to structure. I'm not as much a historian as some of the other people that can admire how it was put together and so on. I like to see what the people used and how they lived on it. And to me, that's the amazing part of it.
Any piece of history is interesting to Ron, especially when it's underwater.
As a historian, shipwreck diving is the thing for me, because I read about it, I study it, I study shipwrecks and ships and shipbuilding. But you never really get the hands-on of ships of that era until you actually go look at one. And in order to look at one of that age, there are none on the lakes anymore. And in order to look at one, you've got to go diving, period.
The sun soon faded, but Superior stayed nearly flat. Our 26-mile ride back made us wish we had just camped on the island, but that would have meant a 40-mile boat ride trip to the other end of Isle Royale the next morning. We instead drove north to Thunder Bay, Ontario, and set out from the marina for Canoe Rocks, the final resting place for two giant steel freighters.
My favorite was probably Emperor, I would have to say. Just the fact that you can see a 500-plus foot freighter sitting on the bottom, that all the cargo holds, as you go down, the cargo holds get more complete and more intact, and to see telescoping hatch covers as they were when the ship went down.
It seemed endless as you were going down and seeing the holds there, the hatches, the open holds.
It's impossible to express the size of these ships without photos and video, and a diver need only to dip into one of these giant hatches to see how big they really are.
You just don't realize it. You know, you can go by them on a boat and out on seaways anywhere, and they look so huge, but you'd never picture yourself being able to go over and touch it and be able to cover any part of it you want. And when you think about the people that sometimes have lost lives on it, but their lives were dedicated to, that was their career. They worked these boats.
Emperor crushed its bow on the rocks and broke in two while hauling ore to Ohio. 12 of the crew were lost when the aft end settled in 150 feet of water. We really wanted to get onto the intact stern, but another dive boat beat us to the buoy. The ship is so long that two dive boats can set up on different floats, and the divers would never see each other.
If the midsection and the bow is any testament as to what that stern section is like, it's got to be gorgeous.
We opted to take our second and final dive on the nearby Chester Congdon. A ripple in the water shows us where the midsection now lies, so close to the surface that a dive boat could easily hit the shipwreck.
The bow of a vessel with the pilot house completely intact. The only unfortunate part is that the pilot house was completely stripped, so all it is blank windows. But there is some mystique to seeing blank windows looking back out at you.
A lot of things are missing that were stripped out of it, and I'm not sure if it was for salvage reasons or over the years divers had happened to take them. But it was nice to see it. I mean, you could go in there and look and see what the captain looked out over. And the spindles that went around the deck in front of the pilot house were old wood spindles, which was unique for something like that, not to see just metal everywhere.
The fog that surrounded Isle Royale kept the sunlight from penetrating down 110 feet to the bow.
It was dark because we didn't have sun to begin with, and then of course what little light we had was starting to fade, so I was able to use my HID light to see a fair amount, but it's still, you know, it's a little dark, and from what I understand, that spot is particularly dark to begin with, so it adds a little bit of a hesitancy to your dive.
Night fell quickly and we had no plans on a third dive. Our weather had been perfect for 3 days on Lake Superior, and flashes of lightning from the south meant we should begin the 30-mile run to Canada right away.
We did pick up some weather on the way back, and it's amazing how big this bay is, because you've got a good 10-mile or better run out just to get past these points. And as everybody said, the reason the shipwrecks around here, because the area is notorious for reefs. And as we were driving along in the boat, we could see on the fish finder, in the bottom finder, that you'd be in 120 foot of water and it'd shoot up to 30 feet or 15 feet in no time.
Careful planning pays off when it's pitch dark in low visibility on the water. Technology does too when you can count on satellites to bring you safely home. Matt leaves nothing to chance.
I'm comfortable in the water, I really am, and I think that's what you have to have. You don't want to go out there with no experience. But like I said, we double check. We have 2 GPS units, we have 2 marine radios, and we've laid out a compass course. So if all else fails, we go back the way it used to be done.
Isle Royale certainly lived up to its reputation for incredible diving, and our team already has plans for another visit.
I would definitely recommend this for anyone that's interested in even going up there just to hike, etc. But divers, I'd say you have to get there at least 1 or 2 dives of your career.